Tonight, a new apartment building is approved for the Village Mall parking lot. That story, and
the health authority says there's a job for every student who graduates from nursing school this year. But so far, only 3 have been hired.
We are going to lose our graduates.
There's no seamless plan created for the nurses to transition from education into the workforce.
We'll have more later in the show.
I knew I was sick. I knew what was happening wasn't right, and I could have died if I didn't keep going back to the hospital.
A young woman's symptoms were dismissed in the emergency room, and advocates say she's not alone.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. The province says it's offering jobs to all nursing school graduates in Newfoundland and Labrador, but the nurses union says only 3 of 121 of them have been hired for full-time permanent jobs. Here and Now's Mark Quinn reports.
If there's been some misunderstanding, I just want to be very clear that we do have a position available for every graduate in 2025.
The province's health authority and the health minister are responding to concerns raised by the union that represents registered nurses. The union says the vast majority of student nurses, 118 of 121, have not secured full-time permanent jobs in this province. The health authority says that will change by the time students graduate in April.
So far, we have offered some positions within the Labrador-Grenfell zone, and we will be continuing to do that. We've done 90 interviews to date, and that's our focus right now.
Still, the nurses union says the health authority is not acting quickly enough.
Our communications director actually received correspondence from a recruiter in Ontario asking us to share. We are going to lose our graduates with over 600 RN vacancies, 81 nurse practitioner vacancies. We're going to lose them.
Coffey says the health authority is part of the problem. She says she recently learned that a health authority manager in central Newfoundland told a student nurse that they prefer to hire private agency travel nurses.
First of all, we're very sorry to hear that that happened, and we've launched an investigation so that we can determine what exactly was said, and then there will be appropriate action that will be taken after that. We're committed to reducing the number of agency nurses that we have within our organization.
The NDP's Jordan Brown says it's difficult to square what the union is saying about hiring student nurses with what the health authority is saying.
It seems like there's no seamless plan created for the nurses to transition from education into the workforce and NLHS. So obviously there's a communication error, there's a misrepresentation of what's actually going to happen.
Last year, more than 90% of nursing school graduates had jobs with the health authority by spring. Malloy says the health authority is slowly but surely reducing its reliance on private agency nurses. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, staying with health, Joyce Spence believes gender bias in healthcare is a roadblock, one that prevented professionals from taking her seriously. The young Flat Rock woman says she was ignored by ER doctors for days before receiving necessary surgery. Here and Now's Malone Mullen has more, but first a warning, this story does contain some graphic details.
If Joyce Spence had it her way, she'd never see the inside of an emergency room again. She's still reeling from the last time she was here, in agony and begging for help. Pleas she believes were ignored because of her age and gender. It started in May. Pain in her right side, weakness, vomiting. The symptoms got so bad she began going to the ER, but doctors said her test results were normal, that it was nothing serious.
I would go to the hospital, and basically every time I would tell them the symptoms, it would just be passed off as anxiety every time, and I would be sent home, and it just kept getting worse. Like the pain would just, it was so tight here in my chest area, like I wasn't able to move. I couldn't eat food anymore without it just coming up. I was passing out.
Spence went back 10 times in less than 2 weeks. She was told the issue was either in her head or an uncomfortable case of constipation.
So many laxatives that they gave me in those past 2 weeks, and like I would tell them too, like I don't nothing's even coming out anymore. Like, it's not just this, I don't think, but no, they were dead set on the constipation, and only constipation, like it can only be that, yeah.
She says she spent 12 days in agony, back and forth between home and the hospital, with no resolution. She recalls screaming for help in a hallway at the Health Sciences Center, doubled over in pain, and nobody came. But when her vomit turned green and black, a new sense of urgency. That's when doctors rushed Spence into surgery, where they discovered her appendix had burst and was riddled with gangrene. The operation was a success. She's recovered physically, but mentally, months later, Spence is still in shock. She's losing weight, can't sleep, and her hair is falling out by the handful.
I think when I walked into the room and they seen a 21-year-old young girl, they immediately dismissed me and thought that there couldn't be anything wrong with me, so I was not on their minds and not on their radar. And if they didn't have that preconceived idea of me, those thoughts wouldn't have been formed, and maybe I would have gotten the proper care that I should have.
Since sharing her story, Spence says she's heard from other women who similarly felt ignored by the healthcare system, who had to fight to be believed. I spoke to some of those women for this story. They said that their pain was diminished when they went to these ERs. They were told their symptoms weren't as bad as they thought it was, and they believed they weren't taken seriously because of their gender. The international science journal The Lancet published an editorial this year on the subject, noting an Australian study which found 1 in 3 women had felt dismissed and unheard by an insensitive medical professional. This women's advocate says the problem is systemic.
Some of those root causes are looking at things from research, funding available to that research, development of treatment options, even kind of testing around population samples, and diagnostic plans that are available. Historically, those have been by and large done by, with, and for men, so that inherently creates a bias.
But this head of emergency medicine says that bias doesn't exist in his hospitals.
If we find that there is a trend for this, then we would go to the physician group and say we really need to sit down and see if there is an issue here we need to address and potentially up our awareness and potentially do extra training in that area. But as the clinical chief, I have not come across any complaints of this type that would lead me to suspect that there is a recurring issue here and there's a pattern.
The health authority says it doesn't have any formal gender bias training for staff, but within the next month plans to incorporate it during training for new hires. It says anyone on the receiving end of discrimination should make a formal complaint so the NLHS can improve its care. For Spence, though, that reassurance comes too little, too late.
I think as young women, we're always told what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to think, and not to trust our instincts, but most of the time the gut instinct is right. I knew I was sick, I knew what was happening wasn't right, and I could have died if I didn't keep going back to the hospital. If I had listened to those doctors and went back home, what could have really happened if I didn't go back?
It's a question that still haunts the young woman who believes a patient in pain should be believed. Malone Mullen, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the federal government is putting $218,000 into housing supports for veterans. Ottawa is partnering with the local organization End Homelessness to come up with solutions for soldiers in St. John's.
We're here to announce our veteran homelessness program funding, which is going to run through until the end of December 2026. Through that program, we're accessing the capacity building stream, and we have hired a veteran navigator to help us kind of unpack veteran needs within our community and help to connect homelessness and veteran services. Certainly we see veterans in particular entering homelessness a lot further along in their journey after leaving service. There are a lot of complicated mental health factors, trauma-based factors, a lot of things that can result in housing insecurity down the line, and we see a definite reluctance, and naturally so, to access some more traditional housing services in the community. Veterans are out there and are struggling, especially with things like housing, income security, mental health addictions, and all those things, and struggle to come forward, as I said. And I think they're just definitely a misunderstood population and an underreached population, and it's up to us, I think, to try to figure out how we are better at reaching out to them as opposed to expecting them to show up on our doorsteps.
Well, the Village Mall is one step closer to living up to its name. St. John's City Council has unanimously voted to approve an apartment building in the far back corner of the mall's parking lot. The proposal says it will be a 6-story building with just over 100 housing units with a parking garage on the ground floor. More details are expected as the development continues, but Council says it's an exciting redevelopment.
It's unusual when you would have a project like this, and it's already a hub for public transportation. It's already a hub for the community in terms of the services that they may use there now, and ones that may be there in the future.
Well, the province is also looking for someone to take over this property, the old Trinity Loop Amusement Park. Right now, they're just taking tourism-related ideas like RV parks, resorts, and campgrounds. There's no deadline for submission, and more information is available on the Department of Fisheries, Forestry, and Agriculture website. And the Newfoundland Rogues' new coach has arrived and is busy getting ready for the team's opening game Saturday night at the Mary Brown Centre. Recently hired Reese Gaines comes to St. John's with an impressive basketball resume. We caught up with him late last week at a team tryout.
Free throws, 2 baskets, both baskets, free throws. I went to the University of Louisville, played for 2 Hall of Fame coaches, Denny Crum and Rick Pitino. Great experience. Obviously one of the best teachers of the game, Rick Pitino and Denny Crum. Greatest motivators. So I got a lot of, I learned a lot from them. They're great tutors and mentors for me to have in my basketball career.
Rogues Nation, we are so excited to announce the new head coach of the Newfoundland Rogues. He's a former NBA star and Louisville Cardinal Hall of Famer, who Dwayne Wade once called the hardest college player he's ever played against.
I do not get sick of hearing that. One time I heard that I was in my car and I rolled out my windows and drove real slow. So I enjoy it, but it means a lot. Obviously, he's a great competitor, one of the best players ever played basketball. For him to say that just means a lot, just, in terms of, reminds me how hard I worked to be on that level of him for a short time, obviously. But I'm very appreciative of the comment. Go, 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 go. There you go. There you go. My NBA career was not great. It was not great, but it was eventful. I learned it was a lot of ups and downs, but the learning was great. Obviously, it's great now because when I look back on it, it helps me become a better coach, better father, better husband. All those experiences you gain from going through adversity. And it was also a dream, the positive side. Not many people can say they've stepped foot in the NBA basketball floor. Not many people can say they scored a few points in that league. So it's a great experience. I want to see how God used the pick and roll. It's a lot warmer than I thought it was going to be, thank God. The people are just as friendly as I heard. So I'm just getting to grow. It's a beautiful, beautiful scene, beautiful scenery, so I'm enjoying it. Just offense for right now. The biggest challenge is selecting players beyond the skill level too, right? So we're in Newfoundland. We got to have great people capable of being great teammates, playing together, positive attitudes. So at the same time, obviously, being skilled. And in this league, one thing you have to do is be competitive. So trying to find all those attributes in the player and the team is going to be difficult, but that's the challenge. I wish I had another word for excited, a better word. I don't, but I am. I think the league has a lot of potential to grow, and there's a lot of good players in the league, and it's going to be fun to coach.
I love the coach says it's a little warmer than he expected it to be. I can tell you over the next couple of days, we're in for a little bit of a roller coaster, but today certainly seeing some mild temperatures out there. 12 degrees in St. John's, up across Labrador, much cooler, but there is a rainfall warning in place. And as we head through the next couple of days, the weather on the way, rain, and more rain with those rainfall warnings, and also the temperature roller coaster on the way, cooling down and then right back up. I'll get into all the details coming up a little later.
Lobster harvesters are buoyed by a successful season. What does the future hold? Watch Lobster Hope, Sunday at 11:30 and Monday at 7.
Musician Dave Penny is known for his hilarious songs and recitations, but even he was surprised when he wrote something funny about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now Penny is cancer-free and returning to the stage with musical partner Daunt Lee for the Dave and Daunt Comeback Special.
One night I said, I suppose I got to go to the health sciences. I hadn't slept for weeks and couldn't breathe in through my sinuses. So last summer, I ended up in the hospital with COVID, not knowing that, to make a long story short, not knowing that I had non-Hodgkin lymphoma too, which had my body thrown out of whack, and the COVID put me into the ICU. Yeesh. So anyway, and then the year just sort of went, chemotherapy, stem cell transplant, all that stuff to get well again, which worked, as far as I know.
And how are you feeling these days?
Great, perfect, all ready to go for the next big show.
Daunt, it's never fun watching your friend go through something hard. What was it like for you?
Oh, very challenging. I think Mark Bragg wound up being ill right at the same time, right? So, but we just waited it out. Mark's doing much better. Dave's doing much better. And I'm pleased as punch to know it.
It looks like we're gonna be here for a while, but here comes the news crews, put on a big smile.
Humor is such a big part of the group, but, humor is one of those things that always helps us in those awkward situations in life. How do you think humor helped you guys in the last year or so?
Actually, it's funny because the whole time I was in the hospital, people were commenting on, I would put up the scatter update, oh, when are we going to hear a recitation or a song about this? And I said, I don't know. It's not quite, a happy theme. And anyway, I was walking the dog one day and I was scuffing my feet around. He was looking for a ball. I remember distinctly a line popped into my head and I said, well, I'll be darned. It can be a funny topic. They did that many x-rays, I'd say they ran out of film to find the viruses responsible and go and kill them. Turned out that what was going on was not only pneumonia, it was angioimmunoblastic T-cell non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Eef. All right, we're back. We're going to be doing a show at Bannerman Brewery on November the 7th.
That's a Thursday.
It's a Thursday. It's our first time playing together in a year.
All the shows that I've had the pleasure of playing with him, I don't think I've ever heard the same song introduced the same way twice. So this one of the fun things is that it's not really scripted. We don't go up with a set list or maybe he has a general idea of what he's going to say about each song before he starts it, but it takes me by surprise every time too.
So do you, Dave? Do you think about it beforehand, or is it something that just kind of happens in the moment?
No, to be honest with you, if I'm going to be, if I'm going to sort of pull back the curtain, I really should take some more time in thinking of how I'm going to introduce songs, because sometimes I go off on tangents and whatever.
I think it's part of the magic.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
Well, iconic Corner Brook musician Dave McHugh has died. He was a mainstay of the West Coast music scene, and tomorrow on Here and Now, we hear from some of the musicians he influenced throughout his career. Well, look who made a little visit on the West Coast. The man in red was spotted yesterday running through the tablelands, and you can even see him with some of his reindeer. The Glass Station happened to catch him on camera. They've been finding him for years and selling Christmas cards when Santa takes his scenic trips to Gross Mourne. But he better get back to his workshop. Christmas is just 6 weeks away. Oh, 6 weeks away. I started to panic a little bit there.
I just did too. When you said that,
yeah.
I was like, what? 6 weeks?
Gotta get shopping. Oh my goodness. Yeah, not a lot of snow out there for Santa for sure, but lots of rain on the way in the east.
Yes, lots and lots of rain on the way. And you know what? Temperatures are much warmer than they were yesterday too. So we're in for a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Let's take a look at just how different those temperatures are from yesterday. Up 7 degrees in St. John's from last night. At Corner Brook, you're sitting right where you were yesterday. And then up across Labrador, temperatures are actually a little cooler, 4 degrees colder in Lab City. And Makovic, you're about 1 degree colder. So these temperatures are going to drop, especially for the west coast and central areas of Labrador, or central areas of the island rather, as we head through the day tomorrow. But for the time being, we're going to hang on to these warm temperatures, especially through tonight. 12 degrees right now is what it is in St. John's, 11 in Terra Nova. But you head towards central and the west coast. It is a bit cooler, anywhere from 4 to 8 degrees, down to -8 in Lab City right now at the moment. So taking a look at the rain, we saw a little bit of a break in the showers this morning east. And that rain has moved in and will continue as we head through tonight. It looks like there's a little bit of a break there to the south. But I will assure you there is much more rain where that came from. And you can see that on the satellite, just where those clouds are originating from, tapping into some tropical moisture. And that's why we're seeing a lot of rain that we're going to see over the next couple of days. So we're going to tap into this moisture as we head through Thursday. Right through the weekend, most of us are going to be seeing some of that moisture, and that will continue into next week as well. Environment Canada has a rainfall warning in place. This will continue through Thursday. There is quite a bit more rain on the way as we head through the overnight tonight, and it will come. Some of us will be seeing very heavy rain at times through the overnight. It will depend really exactly where this system tracks or where most of the heavy rain tracks, but we're looking at somewhere between 60 to 80 millimeters of rain. Now, on the back side of this, northerly winds are cooling things down and will continue to do that as we head through the overnight. So the rain will change over to the potential for some periods of snow, especially as we get towards the morning hours for central and parts of the west coast as well. And you can see that there in the temperatures. Now that 6 degrees in St. John's won't be till tomorrow morning because the winds for the most part tonight will be out of the south, anywhere from about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. You head west, cooler, minus single digits, and much cooler up across Labrador. -14 will be your overnight low in Lab City tonight. Heading towards the coast, though, temperatures a tad warmer into the minus single digits. So for tomorrow, watching this line, really where we're going to see rain, potentially some ice pellets in the purple there, and then the darker blues is where we're going to see the potential for some snow. But for most of the day tomorrow, well, really all of tomorrow, the Avalon will be in rain, and then we'll see this line of ice pellets potentially creep towards basically Terra Nova, potentially even the Clarenville area. And then towards central, you're looking at some rain mixed with some wet snow potentially through the day as well. Now, we will see that northerly wind drop. And as that happens, or rather the northerly wind will drop the temperatures tomorrow, so down to about the single digits, like I said, for the Avalon. And then things clearing out for the most part for the west coast, up across Labrador, quiet weather expected through and even into early Thursday morning. So as far as rainfall totals go, just through Thursday, we could be talking about 60 to 80 millimeters of rain. But if we continue this map through Tuesday of next week, we are looking at, over 100 millimeters, certainly possible. So temperatures tomorrow, like I said, going to start mild, dropping into the afternoon with northerly winds, which will be quite gusty, 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. That will be the case through central as well. So really not a nice day tomorrow. The west coast, you're looking at 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Much cooler, though, with the flurry activity expected. Labrador, for the most part, you're looking at a pretty decent day, except towards the coast with some flurries in the mix there and your temperature hovering around 0. I'll get into the long-range forecast coming up a little later.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Well, going back to the topic of Christmas, the annual Christmas Craft Fair was held once again at the Jack Byrne Arena in Torbay over the weekend, and this year was a special one as the event celebrated its 50th anniversary. And one of the vendors has been selling her creations at the fair for almost as long as the event has existed.
The Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador, when they started this craft fair 50 years ago, my 2 little ones at that time, we started going to the craft fairs, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if one of these days we could be a vendor? You saw such exquisite treasures there, regardless of the locations. The first ones we went to were at the Arts and Culture Centre, but my favorite craft fairs were the ones at the St. John's Memorial Stadium. The Craft Council then was called the Craft Development Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, and they had such high standards, and the vendors and the craftspeople and artists there were perfectionists with their craft, and they were so proud to show it off. So many awards were given and presented. It was just a beautiful thing. The whole city was abuzz way back then. And then it moved off to the convention center, and it's ended up here at the Jack Byrne Arena now, and it just evolved. Some people have retired, but the young craftspeople coming through the system have been welcomed in with open arms, and it's such an inspirational place. Not only does it promote our Newfoundland culture, it's really important for our emotional well-being that we stay connected and we keep those links. We form friendships that have lasted a lifetime. It keeps us connected to our roots. It helps us understand that every culture has a value. The more diverse we become, the more we appreciate other people's cultures, and we learn to value their cultures equally with our own. And I think that will connect the entire planet eventually, and we will all get along better because of it.
Yes, and as we just heard, vendors are eager to get a spot at the craft fair. And as we'll see in this archival piece, it was the same story back in 1991 when the event was struggling to accommodate the high demand for tables.
Of the 111 stalls at the Christmas Craft Fair, only 10 of them are reserved for people from outside the province.
We don't want to block out other provinces. It's just that right now the city doesn't have the accommodations to provide us with the space that we need, or there isn't a facility here that can provide the space that we need to accommodate all the people who apply for a fair.
Several people from outside the province were turned away, and in fact there was hardly any room for all the Newfoundlanders who wanted to sell their wares. It's so tight, these 2 friends from Nova Scotia had to double up to get into the show.
She got in, and then she shared with me.
Pat wouldn't be here this year if she wasn't such a good friend of mine.
The first year I came, I think there was 1 or 2 other people from away, and this year it was very dicey as to whether who was going to get in and who wasn't.
But some of the stalls reserved for outsiders are being filled by Newfoundlanders who've moved away. Linda Wall is a Corner Brook native who moved to Nova Scotia. This year she's going to school in Vancouver. She says the added expense of returning for the show was worth it. And she says there are many craft producers in Nova Scotia who feel the same way.
Yeah, it's getting harder for out-of-town people, yeah. People in Nova Scotia are hearing all about it, and that's where I'm from now, Nova Scotia. And they all want to get in and can't do it.
Local craft producers say having the out-of-towners adds to the show.
Oh yeah, plus that also gives our people some ideas, right, of what's going on the mainland, things like that. Maybe something you could get into or whatever, right?
Craft producers from out of the province may have an easier time getting space at the show next year. It's expected to be 10 days long, and they're looking for a larger location. David Zelser, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, food bank workers across Canada say they've seen a surge in the number of clients since the pandemic, and we've talked a lot about that same trend here in this province. Well, today a report from the country's largest city shows just how widespread food bank use has become. In the last year, there were 3.5 million client visits to Toronto's food banks, nearly 1 million more visits than the previous year, and it's surprising to hear who has been going.
59% have a post-secondary education. Half of the clients have full-time employment. They've done everything right. They went to school, they got a job, they're working hard, and yet they still have to make use of food charity.
The head of Daily Bread Food Bank says the food bank anticipates its reserves will be so depleted in the next 18 months it will have to reduce the amount of food it gives out. 1/4 of food bank clients in Toronto are children or youth. Well, the federal government is sending labor disputes at ports in Montreal and Vancouver to binding arbitration. The labor minister says the country can't afford the economic cost of work stoppages at its two largest ports. CBC's Vanessa Lee has the latest.
Labor Minister Stephen McKinnon says he didn't make the decision lightly. He says negotiations in BC have been going on since 2022. And despite both sides meeting with federal mediators over the weekend, no progress was made. In Montreal, negotiations have been going on since last year. The Maritime Employers Association locked out nearly 1,200 workers after they rejected the latest offer. McKinnon says negotiated agreements are the best way forward, but, quote, "We must not allow Canadians to suffer when certain parties don't fulfill their responsibility to reach an agreement." He says the stoppages at Canada's biggest ports are significantly impacting the economy, supply chain, thousands of jobs, and the country's reputation as a reliable trading partner.
We want to make sure that our economy continues to function, that our trading relationships continue to function, and that international commitments that Canadian companies and workers have made to supply other countries are honored.
Here in Montreal, the union representing longshore workers calls it a dark day for workers' rights. In a statement, it says collective bargaining is a constitutional right, and Canadians should be very concerned. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
Well, from one labor dispute to another, Canada Post workers could be off the job as early as Friday. The union and the corporation have been bargaining over a new contract, but have yet to reach an agreement. Nisha Patel looks at what a strike or lockout could mean.
It's the busiest time of year for Canada Post leading up to the holidays, but postal workers are preparing to walk out.
We're fighting, for fair wages. We're also fighting for improved health and safety. We're fighting to retire with dignity.
After a year of negotiations, the two sides are still far apart. If they don't reach a deal, the union will be in a position to strike just after midnight on Friday.
Obviously, we'd prefer to get an agreement in the next 72 hours and put this behind us and try to build back our holiday volumes.
Wages are one sticking point. Canada Post has offered an 11.5% pay bump over 4 years. The union is pushing for 23%. Canada Post has also proposed expanding delivery to weekends, which the union has resisted. For now, the federal government won't step in.
We will make every effort possible to keep them at the table and keep them talking. And we hope to achieve a negotiated settlement there.
Canada Post said a strike would further strain its finances. The Crown Corporation has lost $3 billion since 2018. For small business owners like Don McCowan, the timing of it all couldn't be worse.
It is drastic. Well, 45% of our business goes out through Canada Post. So if all of a sudden we can't ship that 45%, you can't meet your overhead.
This is the time of year when he sees the biggest demand for his toy models. He says half of his revenues could disappear.
We have no backup for the simple reason that backup is very expensive. The courier companies charge a lot more.
During past labor disputes, the union has used rotating strikes to minimize disruptions. A full national strike is also on the table. That would shut down operations entirely. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it has been 1 week since Donald Trump was elected as President of the United States, and he's wasting no time assembling the team he wants around him when he launches his second term in the White House. And a couple of his failed opponents within the Republican Party are in line for some key positions. CBC's Katie Simpson has the details.
Donald Trump is working to ensure his team is ready to go the day he returns to the White House, selecting Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, to be his Secretary of State. Trump and Rubio were rivals back in 2016 as they fought over the Republican presidential nomination.
Little Marco Rubio, he's a total disaster.
They've since made up, and Rubio has extensive experience on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and is considered a hawk on China and Iran. The former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, will be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, a pivotal role as Trump reaffirms U.S. support for its ally. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem will head up the Department of Homeland Security. She's a rising star within the Republican Party, but faced criticism for admitting to killing her 14-month-old dog because the dog wasn't good at hunting. And Florida Congressman Mike Waltz will be Trump's new national security advisor. He's a staunch Trump loyalist who has criticized Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the past, promoting Pierre Poilievre on social media, writing, "This guy is going to send Trudeau packing in 2025 finally and start digging Canada out of the progressive mess it's in." Some Canadian leaders are working to make sure they too are ready for the new Trump administration. Ontario Premier Doug Ford suggesting Canada get in Trump's good graces by cutting Mexico out of the updated North American Free Trade Agreement, punishing Mexico for skirting the rules of the agreement by accepting cheap Chinese-made imports.
We do a bilateral trade deal with the U.S., and if Mexico wants a bilateral trade deal with Canada, God bless them. But I'm not going to be drawn down with these cheap imports taking men and women's jobs from hardworking Ontarians.
Prime Minister Trudeau isn't shutting the idea down completely, noting that most allies have a problem with China's trade practices. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
So here's what we've gathered from talking to local residents.
I spoke with a renter who's facing eviction this fall.
It is not for the weak of stomachs.
What does it mean for you to be able to give that advice and to know that you've helped?
Don't look down.
If this is something that you didn't know about, let me tell you.
Heather Gillis, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
St. John's.
Corner Brook.
Shaji, Inuk First Nation.
Grand Falls, Windsor.
New West Valley, Newfoundland and Labrador. Well, we've already seen reindeer on the show tonight. Now it's time for moose. And if you've ever wondered how to properly call a moose, outdoor enthusiast Charlie White knows how and how to be safe about it. And you might be surprised at the different ways you can get the animal's attention.
Hello, my name is Charlie White, and today we're in Area 6 up behind Cole Brook, and we're going to learn how to do some moose calls. So what I pack before heading out is all the essentials that I will need for that outing. Binoculars, calls, food, water, you name it, whatever we're going to need to get us through the day. The best time for viewing moose is early in the morning or late in the evening. This time of the year, during the rut, they can be vocal and active all day long, but generally they will bed down, sometimes as early as 8 a.m. And when I'm scouting moose, I look for tracks. I want to see not just fresh tracks, I want to see old tracks. That tells me that the moose are in the area and have been for some time, moving back and forth. Same thing for the droppings. Normally when I go to an area and it's first thing in the morning and it's right quiet and the wind hasn't come up yet, I start off quiet because there may be a moose bedded down nearby and we don't want to be too forceful when the woods are so quiet and the moose is so close. So I'll always start off quiet and gradually increase if the need is there. Before going out, the safety cautions that you should keep in mind is make sure you tell somebody where you're going and when you plan to return. The more visible you are, the more safe you are. You want to make sure that other hunters can properly see you and identify you. Okay, so now it's time to learn some moose calls. The first call we're going to learn is the basic contact call. And all we're going to do is say the word earn, earn. And then we're going to try to get a little bit more nasally, earn. And then we're going to drop the N, earn, earn. And then we're going to take our hands, we're going to pinch our nostrils, cup our hands. For more realism, we're going to try to expel just a little bit of air. So this is a bull grunt, a common bull grunt. This is aggravated contact call. So there's a couple of calls that I use to help project my call. And one is just simply a plastic cone. And this one here was a custom made moose call for me. This one's made of fiberglass and reinforced in for raking on trees to try and mimic the sound of a bull scraping his antlers. And as you can tell, moose are very complicated and they have a great range of vocabulary. I hope this helps explain some of the moose calls that you'll hear this time of year in the moose woods. And I hope you guys get out, practice your calls. You can also watch more of my adventures on my YouTube channel, NL Ghost Wolf. Until next time.
Well, Ashley, I love getting out in the woods, but I can't say I'll ever be out there doing those moose calls. But no. Charlie seems really good at it.
Definitely is, yeah.
All right, so let's have a look at the long-range forecast. You were talking about all the rain that's on the way. How long is that going to last?
For a while. In fact, we're looking at the rain continuing through the weekend and even into the beginning of next week as we see lots of moisture headed our way. Let's take a look at what's going to happen as we head into Wednesday evening and eventually into Thursday. So another push of moisture expected. So this heavy rain, the periods of heavy rain that we're seeing are going to continue as well. And some of that rain is going to push back towards central, leaving the west coast into some showers as well, potentially into Thursday evening. And this is going to push towards Labrador as we head through the overnight and into Friday morning, where we could see a mix of precipitation. So even some ice pellets and then eventually some freezing rain in the mix there as well. Temperatures are going to bump back up again right through the weekend. So temperatures will be back up to between 9 and 13 degrees for most of the island. The west coast, you're looking at temperatures in the single digits through the day. And then we're starting to talk about temperatures a little bit above zero for the southeast and then below zero for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Nain, and Lab City. For now, Thursday's quiet. You're going to see just a mix of sun and cloud. Clouds will be on the increase, though, for those of you in central Labrador. And then eventually things will get a little messy as we head into Friday. And we can see that pink push further and further north as we head through Friday. This is the best chance of seeing some freezing rain in the mix there. A couple models, a little discrepancy in that, but this will be the best chance of seeing some freezing rain. So definitely keep an eye on the forecast there. But most of the island will be in rain through the day again on Friday. And this is when a bigger push of warm air will move in. And really most of the island will be somewhere between 11 to 13 degrees. Single digits, though, still hanging on for the northern peninsula. Same thing for southeastern Labrador. And eventually your temperatures will warm up for central areas of Labrador. But until you get there, that's when you're looking at that risk of some freezing rain. So keep that in mind for your Friday. Again, Lab West, northern Labrador, you're going to sit this one out. You're still looking at some cloudy periods through the day with your temperature somewhere between 1 and -1. Long range forecast showing that sticking around till Saturday. Sunday, a little bit of a drop in the temperatures back down to the single digits, but overall a wet and rainy weekend. We are looking at more in the way of showers both Saturday and Sunday. We likely get back into some of that heavier rain as we get into next week, but that's still quite a ways away. For central Newfoundland, you're looking at staying into the double digits as we head into Sunday. Same thing for western Newfoundland with showers in the mix for you. And then for eastern Labrador, you're warming up above zero by the time we get into Saturday and Sunday, and some freezing rain expected in Lab West as we head into Saturday. Our weather photo of the day is actually Middle Cove Beach. There's been a lot of wave action around there because of where the area of low pressure was and the windy conditions. And Julie shared this great shot with us. If you have any weather photos that you'd like to share with us, you can send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Wow, that is a beautiful shot. Great shot, Julie. Thank you so much for sending that in. And Ashley, I'm excited about all those warm temperatures. It's going to be messy out there, but it's going to be nice and mild. So I'm looking forward to that.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashley. And thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Hope you can join us again tomorrow. Good night.